I know what you're thinking. A 45-minute video.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
This is one of the few times on YouTube that the person can look you in the eye and tell you that their video may save you $1 million over the next few years, and me actually be telling you 100% the truth. The things we're going to go over in this video, step by step, are going to help you decide which retirement to choose and how to avoid taxes as much as possible over the next few decades as you're trying to build wealth for yourself and your family. If you don't have time right this second, then under the video, click save or add to playlist or something like that, so that later when you have time to sit down and watch this, you can do so and go through this step by step, with especially if you have a spouse or something that you guys want to go through and figure out what's the best option for you. But I don't know about you guys, but I certainly don't make $1 million an hour. Kenna, do you make $1 million an hour? Did Daddy take your money away? Mommy took your money away? Did she take it to go spend it at Target? Because that's what sounds like the most likely outcome. This is you, the average ordinary investor. Whether you're investing in retirement or you're a young hotshot who just took out a bunch of call options on the latest hype stock, obviously. And to your surprise, you actually hit it big. Your investments pay off, and now you just can't stop daydreaming about all that sweet money you're going to be collecting during your rocket ship to the moon. But there's someone in the background who's always there, who's always watching, just waiting to swoop in and take his cut, your hard-earned money. My name is Hunter with Teaching Wealth. Today I want to teach you a few things. How can we avoid Uncle Sam as much as humanly possible? We're going to learn how investment taxes work in the first place, how we can avoid them as much as possible. We're going to look at your different retirement options, and then I'm going to try to help you decide which one is best for you. Before we can understand how we can work around Uncle Sam, we need to first understand how taxes work when we're making investments, particularly with equities, which is what you're mostly going to be doing. How long you hold the equity before you sell it determines how much tax you pay. If you sell it after holding it less than 1 year, it's known as short term, and if you held it over 1 year, then it's long term. As you can see, if you sell it in a short-term period, then you're going to be taxed at your current income tax rate, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you pay taxes. So you can look at the chart and figure out what amount of taxes you would end up paying. If you can hold it over a year before you sell it, then you're going to pay much less taxes. This also applies to dividends. The average dividend is known as non-qualified or ordinary. They're going to be considered short-term. They're going to be taxed at those rates. And then if you have a qualified dividend, it will be taxed at long-term capital gains rate. So let's go over an example. This is Bob, who is actually a real-life construction worker who's in our Discord chat group. Let's use him as an example to see how these taxes would play out in a real-life scenario. Let's say that he makes $45,000, which puts him in the 22% to 15% tax brackets on the long-term and short-term capital gains. On January 1st of 2020, he buys $2,000 each of Caterpillar and Home Depot. If he goes to sell his Caterpillar in July, let's say that his $2,000 investment has appreciated to $2,500. Well, that's a $500 appreciation, right? Oh wait, by God, is that? It is. Is that Uncle Sam's music? Uncle Sam is going to swoop in and take 22%, as this is a short-term trade, therefore it's subject to Bob's 22% short-term capital gains tax. So Uncle Sam's keeping 110 of that 500, and Bob was only going to get to keep 390. Let's, for example, say he held the Home Depot until the next year and sold it. He held it over 1 year, so it's only subject to the 15% capital gains. So even if he made $500 on this one as well, he's going to pay only $75 in capital gains tax versus the $110 he paid if he sold it short term. That lets him keep $425 instead of $390. But both of those are not ideal, right? We want to figure out ways where we don't have to pay Uncle Sam anything at all, or at the very least, we can pay him the minimal amount that we can. So if you're trading inside of a brokerage account, you are really getting screwed on taxes. Let me just tell you. You're paying income taxes already to get the money that you're putting into the brokerage account to invest. You're always going to have to pay capital gains taxes when you sell. There is no way to avoid it. And not only that, any capital gains that you get, whether they're from dividends or selling an equity that has now made money, are going to count as income on your tax return. So you're getting double, and kind of triple dipped on taxes. Uncle Sam is eating good in the neighborhood in your brokerage account. Let's look at an example of how that might play out. Let's say you're 30 years old, you make 100 grand, and you want to invest 10% of your money into a brokerage account. Well, 10% of your money would be $10,000. If you're making 100 grand, your tax bracket is 24%. So you first would get $2,400 taken out when you get paid. You have $7,600 left to invest. Let's say that you make an 8% annual return on your money this year. For all of our numbers we're doing today, I'm assuming an 8% annual return is just a slightly conservative, but very close to average return. Well, your $7,600 investment at 8%, it's now worth $8,208, which equals a $608 gain. Let's say that half of these gains were things that you held for over a year before you sold and thus are only subject to long-term capital gains rate, and that half of them are short-term sales in which you're subject to the short-term higher capital gains rate. Just to make it kind of simple and average for you guys, you're going to pay $45.60 in long-term taxes, $72.96 in short-term, for a total of $118.56. So your result is you had $8,208, you lose $118, you only have $8,089.44 to show for your $7,600 investment. And again, this net that you have, this $608 gain minus the taxes that you would pay, those are going to count as income when you do your taxes at the end of the year as well. And something I want to point out, because I know we have a lot of young investors right now, particularly on YouTube, you guys need to keep track, whether it's in an Excel sheet or however you want to do it on paper, you need to be keeping track of how much taxes you are going to owe at the end of the year. This does not come out automatically. Your brokerage will not take this out of your gains automatically. They will give you the full gains now, and these taxes will be due at tax time. Moving over into retirement. Before we get into the details on retirement, I want to define two terms to make this entire process easier on your brain. Contributions are money that you are putting into the account. Distributions are the money that you are going to be taking out of the account when it's time to retire. Post-tax retirements are also known as Roth. That can be a Roth 401k through your work or a 403b through your work. There are a couple other number variations, but 401k and 403b are the more common ones you're going to have available to you. This also goes for Roth IRAs. What you're doing essentially is paying the income taxes now on your contributions so that you're not taxed on your distributions years from now when you retire. So you pay some tax now to avoid a lot of tax later. Any selling of equities that you do inside of that account aren't going to be triggering any capital gains taxes. So all of the money that you are making inside of that account is tax-free. This is particularly useful if you are a very active trader. If you are in a Roth IRA, you get to manage all of your investments. So if you are someone who really knows what they're doing, a Roth IRA would be very useful for you because you can beat the market inside of there. And not only that, you can be doing active swing trades, day trades, whatever, and not paying taxes when you sell. Taxes will not be an issue for you in the back of your mind to always have to worry about on your trades when you're deciding when to exit. Let's go over an example of how this might play out. Let's say you're 30 years old, making $100,000, and you want to set aside 10% of your pre-tax $100K for your retirement. Well, just like with the brokerage account, you have to pay taxes on that money now, and you would be in 24%, so that's $2,400. That leaves you with $7,600 to be actually actively investing. And let's say that you never put in another dime for the rest of your retirement. Right? You only put in this $7,600. In 40 years, that is going to be worth $184,543. Now, to some of you who are new to investing, you're going to say that is bullcrap. There's no way that that would turn into that much money, but it's true. And you just don't understand the power of compound interest. And I encourage you to Google compound interest and do a Google image search for it. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, how incredible it is. The longer you are investing, so here we have a 40-year horizon. That's why it's appreciating so much. If you made 8% every single year for 40 years, it would turn into $184,543. Now, the good news is You already paid taxes on this. So all of this money that you just made does not get taxed when you take your distributions, when you start making withdrawals from your account. So you get to keep the full $184,543. Let's look at pre-tax retirement options. These are also going to be known, if they're through your work, as 401k or 403b or something similar, but they are not Roth. Roth is post-tax. We just want a regular pre-tax 401k, 403b. And all of this will also apply to a traditional IRA, not a Roth IRA. On a pre-tax retirement account, you're going to be paying capital gain taxes on your distributions, but you're not going to be paying any taxes on the money you're putting in now. You're putting it in tax-free. So on the 401k and 403b, your employer will take it out of your paycheck automatically before they take your income taxes out. So you're avoiding the income taxes. You're avoiding tax now, but you have to pay tax later. And the good thing, if we look at the same exact example here, you have $100,000. You want to invest 10% of your income. That would be $10,000. You do not have to pay any taxes on it now. So you get to put in $10,000, right? Not only that though, a lot of people don't realize this. You get to count when you do your taxes at the start of the next year, I should say. You're going to get that back as a tax break, however much you put in. So you're going to get $2,400 extra on your tax return. So let's say you put in the $10,000 as your investment at 8% over 40 years. That's worth $242,819. It's now time to retire in 2060. You're still at the 24% tax bracket, making $100,000. You're going to owe a whole lot of money, $58,276.56. So we take your $242,819 that you have in your account, plus the $2,400 that you saved in taxes at the start of the next year, and subtract the taxes you will owe on your investment. That equals $186,942.44. I want to bring to your attention something that you can do. A lot of people don't think about this. If you're intelligent and disciplined, you already know that you're going to be getting this $2,400 back in taxes the next year as a credit. What you could do is set aside now an extra $2,400. So instead of investing only 10%, you could invest 12.4%, which would be $12,400 of your salary, and set aside that extra $2,400 now, budget it out, knowing that you're going to get paid that $2,400 back. If you invested the full $12,400 now, that extra $2,400 gets to appreciate with compounding interest over the next 40 years. So if I flip back, the $10,000 became $242,000. Your $12,000 is going to become $301,000. That extra $2,400 makes a whopping difference. So if you plan ahead appropriately, you can make a whole lot more in the long run. The taxes on your $301,000 is going to be $72,262, but that's okay because we're still going to net more at the end. Now we do not get to add in that $2,400 that we got to add in last time, because instead of saving it and putting it in our pocket the next year, we went ahead in advance and invested it. So which of those two options performs best? Obviously, the second option by a $42,000 difference. Okay, so which is better, post-tax or pre-tax? Let's quickly just look at our comparison from earlier. In both of them, you make $100,000 and you want to invest 10%. But on the Roth, you pay the taxes now. On the pre-tax, you don't pay taxes now. But that leaves you with less to invest in the Roth and more to invest in the pre-tax, particularly if you do the $12,400. They both appreciate the same 8% every year. At the end, the Roth does not owe any taxes, but it made less money because it was only able to contribute $7,600, whereas your pre-tax option was able to contribute $12,400. So your result is much higher in the pre-tax. So you say, well, Hunter, why would I ever want to do the Roth? Well, there are multiple reasons. We're going to get into the details here. Before we get into that, I just want to do a super quick touch on your college savings and taxes and how they work, now that you understand pre and post tax. Both a Coverdell and a 529 ESA require you to put your money in post tax when you do your contribution. So the same as the Roth examples that we just talked about. You pay taxes now and you put the money into the Coverdell or 529, whichever one you have. On both of them, you will not be taxed when it's time to take out the withdrawals. So just like with the Roth, you're not going to pay taxes at all when you're taking the money out, as long as you're using it for educational purposes, obviously. And then a bonus when it comes to taxes on the 529 is that you're also going to get that tax break, similar to how we talked about with the pre-tax, but you're only going to get it on the state level, not on the federal level. So just some things to consider tax-wise. Now, if you're interested in Coverdell and 529s and which is better for you, I'll be having a video on that fairly shortly, so subscribe to the channel. Which is better, pre-tax or post-tax? Well, pre-tax will perform better for you if tax rates don't raise significantly between now and when you retire. Now that can be whether you yourself somehow, something with your job, let's say now, in our example below at the right here, I'm showing that you're currently in a 12% bracket, which is one of the lower income tax brackets. Let's say you are a student in college, or you are someone making basically minimum wage or slightly higher. You're only paying 12% income tax at the moment. But let's say that by the time you retire years later, you expect to be making a whole lot of money. Let's say you're a med student or a law student. You expect to be in the 35% tax bracket when you retire. 12% now, 35% later. In the left bracket, we're looking at the example we did earlier. You're the average person. You're in the 24% tax bracket now. You expect to be in basically the same tax bracket when you retire years from now. If you were in a 12% now and expect to be 35% later, pre-tax would not be better for you. And why is that? Well, the whole point of a pre-tax is to avoid tax now. Well, the lower the tax rate you're currently in, the less benefit you are getting from avoiding taxes now. Here, you're avoiding $1,200 a year, and in the 24%, you're avoiding $2,400 a year. Not only that, you expect to be taxed at a 35% tax rate when it's time to take your money out. So you're paying a lot more in taxes than you would in this example at 24%. So you're going to net less money overall. If this is your scenario, you may be better off doing a post-tax Roth retirement. But for the average person, you probably are better off doing a pre-tax retirement. Let's compare this same example versus if you did it as a Roth. You would actually make slightly more money if you did it as a Roth than if you did pre-tax. If you were 12% now, 35% later. Pre-tax also performs better if you are in a high bracket now and you expect to work either part-time or not at all when it's retirement time. So why is that? Well, because as we said, pre-tax works best when you're avoiding high taxes now. And it works even better if when it's time to retire, you expect to be in a lower tax bracket. That could either be that you decide you're only going to be working part-time around that age, or you don't want to work at all. Let's say that you and your spouse, one of you think is going to work full-time, and the other one's going to go part-time or something like that. Well, you guys would be in a lower tax bracket when it comes time for you to start withdrawing your retirement. It's important, however, when talking about pre-tax retirement, that you don't expect to need to withdraw any of this money for any reason until it's retirement time. I bring that up because in a Roth IRA, you do have the option to take withdrawals out tax-free. We'll get into that later. But if you don't need the flexibility to be able to do that, pre-tax is probably better off for you. And then the best thing about a pre-tax retirement is that some employers will offer a match in your pre-tax 401k or 403b. So they are contributing basically free money as long as you are matching what they put in. So let's say they have a 5% match. That means as long as you put 5% of your income in, they will give you the same exact 5% amount for free. If this is the case, you absolutely are better off doing a pre-tax retirement. So what I would encourage you to do is go to nerdwallet.com or Google NerdWallet Compound Interest Calculator. Look at our earlier examples that I went over and plug in your own numbers for your own situations and what you think is most likely to be your case, and figure out the math on which one comes out better for you personally. So let's look at the differences between an IRA and a 401k or any other form of work-sponsored retirement. An IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account, and what that basically means is that you are in control of where your investments go, not your work. You are not beholden to only what your work offers you. In both options, you only get to invest a maximum of what the government tells you you can invest. However, it's much higher of a maximum in your work account. Right now for this year, the maximum for a 401k or any other work-sponsored retirement is $19,500, while IRAs are capped at $6,000 a year. In an IRA, you do the deposits yourself. You do not get the benefit of your employer just automatically withdrawing it from your paycheck and putting it in. Now, I will say that these days, most of the big brokerages and companies like Schwab and Fidelity and TD Ameritrade and so on and so forth have ways that you can set up automatic transfers from your checking account into your IRA. So it will, once you get it set up, it'll do the work for you and say take out $500 a month, and that would equal $6,000 over the course of the year. You can do things like that. So this, if you do a tiny bit of work, can kind of be negated. The great thing about IRAs, arguably the best thing, is that you get to do the investing yourself. You get to pick what funds you put in. And you could do individual stocks, you can do whatever you want. You do not get that luxury in your work-sponsored account. Because you get to do your own, you get to choose from some funds that have little to no fees on their different index funds or whatever type of funds you decide to invest in. Whereas with your work, you're often paying small fees on the funds themselves. Let's say you put it all in index funds. You're paying small fees on the index funds, whether you're doing them in your work or in your IRA. But on your work account, you're not only paying those fees, you're often paying the management company of your work's sponsored 401k small fees as well. So you're getting, let's say it's 0.5% a year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but boy, does it add up in the long run. So that's a big point to the IRA. In IRAs, your max income, if you want to do a Roth IRA, can only be $124,000 for a single adult and then $196,000 if you're married. There is no limit on a traditional IRA. It is only on the Roth IRA. And we'll get into Roth versus traditional in a moment. There is no max income limit for your work-sponsored account. Doesn't matter how much money you make, you are allowed to put in the $19,500 maximum. What's the difference between Roth IRA and traditional IRA? Well, as we now know, Roth means post-tax. We pay tax on the money now and then deposit it so that when it comes retirement time, we don't pay any taxes on it then. Traditional is pre-tax. In a Roth, as we just mentioned, you have to make under $124K by yourself, $196K if you're married. In a traditional IRA, there is no max income limit. However, if your work offers a retirement plan and you make over X amount of income, the government will distinguish this every year, just like they distinguish, the cap that you get to put in every year. Then it's possible that you're not going to get that tax break that we talked about earlier if you're doing a traditional IRA. So if you make a lot of money, the traditional IRA is not going to be as beneficial to you as a traditional 401k when it comes to the tax side of things. A great thing about the Roth IRA is that you can transfer this upon your death to your beneficiary, so your children or your spouse or whoever, and they can make tax-free withdrawals. Taxes do not come into play on the death transfer, which is pretty much singular only to the Roth IRA out of all the four retirement options we're talking about here today. On both Roth or traditional IRA, you're only allowed to put in $6,000 per year. And in both of them, again, you get to pick your investments, which gives you tons of options to invest in, but also lets you avoid fees as much as possible. So which one is best for you? Well, if you make over 124K or 196K, then you're not going to be eligible for a Roth IRA at all. And we also mentioned that you're possibly not going to get the full benefits from the traditional IRA when it comes to taxes. So in that case, you're better off just going through your work retirement first, whether you go the traditional route or the Roth route. If you expect there to be much higher taxes on you at retirement than there are now, whether you yourself expect your career path to lead to you making a whole lot more money, it has to be a very drastic difference. But whether your career path will lead you to making a lot more money, or you somehow expect that the government raises rates extremely significantly between now and when you retire, then you're better off doing the Roth 401k or the Roth IRA, because those let you pay taxes now and you expect to be at a much higher tax rate when you retire years from now. If you expect to be the same or a lower tax bracket when you retire, then traditional 401k and or traditional IRA could be the better route for you. If you need the flexibility of those tax-free withdrawals and the tax-free death transfer, then the Roth IRA is the only one that provides those. I don't suggest it, but if you needed money all of a sudden from your Roth IRA for some reason, you can take out your contributions, only the amount of money that you have put in yourself. You can take that money back out tax-free and penalty-free. And that makes sense. Why? Because you already paid the taxes on it when you put it in to begin with. If your employer matches some contributions, then you definitely want to put enough into your traditional 401k to get that match. I personally, for the average American, which is low to middle class and earns less than 123K and 195K married, I suggest a mixture. I think the best option for most Americans is to do a Roth IRA and then a traditional 401k through their work. You're getting post-tax benefits and pre-tax benefits. You're getting the flexibility of the Roth IRA for tax-free withdrawals and, most importantly, tax-free death transfer. And you're getting to avoid taxes in the long term if they do go up for you, while also getting the benefits now of the traditional 401k and getting some tax-free benefits right now.
I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
This is especially true for those of you guys who have an employer match. I strongly suggest you put in enough in your work 401k in the traditional pre-tax option to get that employer match. So in the previous example, if they matched 5%, put in 5% so that you get that 5% match. Then take all of the money that you can scrounge up, pay the taxes on it now, and hit that maximum, right now $6,000 limit, into a Roth IRA. So all of that money is going to be growing tax-free. You would get to choose what you're investing it in. You would get to avoid the extra fees that you're going to probably pay in your 401k through your work. And if you need to take money out of it, it's all tax-free. And if you want to, you still have money left in it and you want to transfer it to your beneficiary, you get to do so tax-free. And they get to take the money out tax-free. Then after maxing that $6,000 into the Roth IRA, you would go back to your employer, crank up your contribution percentage as much as you can afford, and try to max out that 401k. So you would do enough in your 401k to hit the employer match, max out the Roth IRA, and then go back to the 401k and put as much as possible in it. I have a flow chart here that you can pause the screen and go through, and that might help you if you're, again, the average American, lower to middle class, make your decision on what you should be doing in your investments. Now, this is just general advice that I'm giving you. I have tried to provide you with all of the details. And then again, you can take these resources that I'm linking in the description and you can decide which of these is going to be the most beneficial to you in your own scenario. Go to these websites I'm linking, plug in your own assumptions into these calculators, and figure out what's the best path for you. Okay, let me walk you through how to do the formula for yourself when you are trying to figure out which one is best for you personally with your personal finance situation. Open up nerdwallet.com compound interest calculator. To the right side at the top of my screen, you're going to see the questions I need you to answer beforehand for yourself. How much do you have right now to start? You'll notice I color-coded that orange. It's going to be orange in all of the formula here below. So this is known on NerdWallet as your initial deposit. What tax bracket are you in? I already answered. We're going to assume that you're in 24%. You're going to punch in to these numbers, whatever yours is. What percent of annual pre-tax income? Remember, pre-tax. So what percentage do you, and if you have a spouse, and your spouse, feel that you guys can save and put aside annually to be investing in your retirement? If you feel like you can do 10%, then take your annual income added together, multiply it by 0.1, and that will give you what your pre-tax income that you're investing is in dollars. Okay, so for all three examples that I'm going to show you here, you need to know what that is in dollars. And then we're going to go through from there and take that dollar amount and figure out what's the best option for you guys. You'll see investment is $5,000. You plug in whatever your investment is. So I'm going to put $5,000 here in initial deposit. Then I feel that I can afford to put in $4,000 a year from here on out. So this is a post-tax estimate, which means we have to pay the taxes right now on our investment, and we're going to have to be paying it every year up front on our annual contributions. Plug in your tax rate here. For this example, I'm using 24%. If you want to go back to earlier in the video where I showed the tax brackets, you can do that, or you can just look up for yourself what this year's tax brackets are for your income level. So to figure out what your taxes are going to be on your investment, you take your investment, you multiply it by 1.00 minus your percentage here, but in number form. 1 minus 0.24 times $5,000. So our initial deposit is not actually $5,000. We have to pay taxes on it, so it's $3,800. So I'm going to change it to $3,800. Then we have to figure out what is going to be our contributions pre-tax and post-tax. We already said we think we can contribute $4,000 each year. We need to figure out what that is after taxes are taken out. So we do the same thing. $4,000 times, I already know it's 0.76 because we just did it, but you could do it again if you needed to. That's going to be 3,040. So instead of putting the full 4,000 here in contributions, I need to put $3,040. Then we just need to know how long are we going to be holding it. In our assumptions here for this examples, I'm just going to be doing 40 years, and I'm going to be doing an 8% estimated rate of return. I would personally suggest 8%. It's pretty conservative, but pretty realistic too. We don't really know what the future holds. Over the last few decades, you could get as much as 9 or 10% return on your money in the stock market, but there's no guarantee of that. So personally, I like to be slightly conservative. What is our result? We plugged in our initial deposit and our contributions, and we've already paid tax on them because this is a Roth post-tax. So after 40 years at an 8% return, make sure that on compound frequency you select annual. We're going to make 933,088. We do not have to pay any taxes on this because we already paid taxes on it. So our final result is the same, $933,088. Now, how would this same exact scenario compare if we did a pre-tax? You have already answered these questions, but you will notice I have one extra question on this pre-tax option, and that is not only what tax bracket are you in now, what tax bracket will you be in when you retire? So we're going to start from scratch here. We're putting in $5,000 investment and then in $4,000 each year after this. We're going to change our initial deposit over here on NerdWallet to $5,000 and $4,000 contributions. That is going to stay like that, unlike the Roth. This is going to stay like this because we do not have to pay taxes on it yet. But we still need to do a bit of math with taxes because we need to figure out what tax break you're going to get. Since this is pre-tax, it lowers your taxable income. So we take your $5,000 investment for this year and we multiply that by your tax rate. Remember, I'm not doing 1.0 minus this, I'm just doing this by itself. So insert your tax bracket there, just to give you the example here. So $1,200 is your tax break for this year. So again, our initial deposit stays at $5,000. Now in the Roth example, our initial deposit went down. That was because we paid taxes on it. In the pre-tax, we get to put in the full $5,000. Then each year, our pre-tax contributions, we said we can afford $4,000. So we need to figure out the tax break on that every year as well. We're going to take $4,000 times 0.24, and that gives us a tax break of $960 every year. This results 8% estimated return over 40 years, compounded annually in $1,227,747. Now we have to pay taxes. So to do that, we take our result here in green, we multiply that by the taxes. So we'll do 1 minus 0.24 equals times our result, 1227747. So plug in whatever your result number is on yours and whatever your tax bracket is on yours. That ends up being $933,087.72. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that's exactly what the Roth turned out, right? So why did they get the same? Well, we're forgetting we got that tax break. So now we take our pink numbers, which were our tax breaks, and we're going to add them back in to our final formula, because that should count, right? We established earlier that on our $4,000 we were putting in each year, it would be giving us a $960 tax break. So we take $960 and we multiply that by however many years we are doing over here on NerdWallet on our investment time span. In this example, we're doing 40 years. So 960 times 40 is $38,400, and then we add in the $1,200 that we had initially on our initial investment. So to get our final result, we take our green number up here, add in the tax breaks, the initial, and then all of the other 40 years. That gives us $972,687.72. Now, if you wanted to be nitpicky with me, you could say, Hunter, you actually should only get 39 years because you already got your break for the first year, and you'd be correct. So if you wanted to, you could take off an extra 960 there. Now, this gets you slightly ahead of the Roth in this scenario. If you are this person, this is what you have to contribute. This is your tax bracket here, and this is your tax bracket now. This is where I want to bring up. You need to plug in on this taxes later here at the end when we're calculating our final result. This red number here needs to be what you expect your tax bracket to be when you retire, not what it is now. Earlier, we were doing what it is now on this, this, and this. But the tax bracket that you use down here in the results area is what you expect it to be when you retire. Now, earlier in the video, you may recall I told you that if you are intelligent and disciplined, then you can do what I had recommended before. You can already know that you are going to be getting $1,200 back in tax break on the next year, at the beginning of your next year when you do your taxes, and you can then make that part of your initial deposit. You can budget out with your spouse or household or whatever and know, hey, we're going to put in an extra $1,200 because we can't afford it. We will get it back early in the next year with our taxes. You can do the same thing with your pre-tax contributions. You can add in this $960 instead of spending it. You can plan ahead, set aside $960 out of your budget, and it be investing it ahead of time. And you'll see now the power of doing that, of taking that money that you're saving, planning slightly ahead, going ahead and investing it and letting it compound. Watch the power of this. If you want to do this, here's what you do. You do the exact same thing we just did, except your formula is actually going to be even simpler. You put the where you set up our 5,000 initial deposit and our 4,000 contributions, but we get to add in the 1,200 tax break, so our initial deposit now becomes 6,200. So I'm going to go to NerdWallet, I'm going to change that to 6,200. In contributions, it's no longer only going to be 4,000, I'm getting a 960 tax break, so I'm going to do 4,960. Keep everything else the same, and it now becomes $1,522,406, a big difference. Now we still have to pay taxes on that, so you do the same exact formula. You put in your retirement bracket that you expect to be in, and then that will equal $1,157,000. Much more, right? So that is the power of compound interest and investing as much as you can as early as you can. If you guys have any questions about this or anything else we've talked about thus far in the video, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I'm more than happy to help you. You can also tell me what kind of retirement you have in your household and why. The most important thing is that you are investing, period. If any of this has been beneficial to you, the best thing you can do to pay me back is just share this with someone in your family or friends or any of your groups on social media or anyone you think that this could help out to get a head start on their savings. Share it with them so that they get motivated on avoiding taxes as much as possible and setting themselves and their family up for long-term wealth building success. Some upcoming videos I'll be doing related to this topic are what funds should you be putting inside your 401k. In that video, I'm going to literally pull up my work retirement options and my wife's work retirement options so that you can pull yours alongside with it, and we can go through and show you in a real life scenario what to be looking for when you're deciding which kind of funds you should be putting into your retirement. We'll do the same thing in a separate video for your IRA, where we can get more into ETFs, individual stocks, and things of that nature, so I can show you the more diverse options you have inside of your IRA versus your 401ks. We're going to do another video just on how to build a diversified portfolio in general, and then one that covers Coverdale versus 529 ESA and what option is best for you and your children in your personal situation. If any of those sound useful to you, then make sure you hit the subscribe button.